So, a little something that I always liked doing was I started doing this years ago. Conversation started with one of my old army buddies about putting other species from old cartoons or um, old cartoons or other fandoms into Star Wars, right? So, for example, I'll start this little series of something that I thought about quite a lot. My first uh, species from an old cartoon from the 80s that a lot of us grew up watching, Thundercats, right? Thundercats as a species in Star Wars, right? Um, and I linked it all the way back to Legends. Okay, Legends. Well, they're canon. They're officially canon, but I linked them to the Cathar and linking them back. The situation that happened in the show, the original cartoon, and their origin to the Mandalorians invading Cathar. Alright. During the Old Republic, during the Revan era, the Mandalorian Wars took place. And one of the first planets that the Mandalorians, under Mandalore the Ultimate, I believe it was, one of the first planets they invaded was Cathar. And I might be missing a few specifics here and there. By all means, anybody fill in the gaps or correct me if I'm wrong on some things. But they invaded Cathar. Now, many Cathars survived. Their planet was destroyed. The original planet was destroyed. And they spread out through the galaxy. Right? Some got captured, became slaves. Especially the women. A lot of females from certain species or races in Star Wars were a little bit more desired than others. If you get what I'm saying. Same thing with the Twi'leks. But I looked at it as the lower class and then the upper class, right? Or the rich, the royal families, and then everybody else, right? And not saying that the royal families were bad in any way, but the Thundercats, since Lionel was considered a prince, fell into the upper aspect of it. But their home world, the Thundercats, was called Thundera, right? So I looked at it as it's two possible explanations, right? Either Thundera was a colony of Cathar, right? Where some lived on Cathar, some lived on Thundera, or Thundera was the vacation spot. Thundera was where the royals lived, right? The planet for the royals. Or Cathar was the common name for the planet. And in some circles, Thundera may have been the new name, or an ancient name, or just like what they liked calling it, right? Certain groups called it Cathar, some called it Thundera, whatever. Right? Um, or another thing I thought of is maybe Catharians is general, and then Thunderans, the Thundercats, Thunderians, are kind of like a subspecies of Cathar, or a separate race of Cathar. How on Earth we have, there's white people, black people, Asians, or whatever. Maybe you had Catharians, you had Thunderans, you had another species, but they're all from Cathar, right? That also the Thunderans, like I said before, they were maybe part of the royal family. They were part of the ruling class on Thundera. Whether they had a monarchy type situation, or if it was more of a senator kind of relationship, like Queen Amidala, she was a senator, right? So maybe it was that kind of. And then I went down even further to the rabbit hole. Jaga was either force sensitive, he was either just force sensitive, or in his youth he was a failed Padawan. Right? And a lot of people, if you don't know, if you were picked up as a child of the Jedi, you were trained in the Jedi ways, and if you weren't picked up as to become a Padawan, you were either allowed to leave, or you joined like the agricultural corps. You still served the galaxy, but like you're a farmer. You're spread out throughout the galaxy. So maybe he was allowed to go home, right, and be back amongst his people, right, or he left the order for some reason, right, much like Dooku did, or he, the Lost 20 of the Council, and the Eye of Thundera is a kyber crystal, and it was a big chunk of kyber crystal, and it's in the hilt of the sword, lightsaber, if you will, and way back when, and again, this could have been something that got passed down through generations. If you go back further enough in Star Wars, the first weapons were enchanted swords. So the Sword of Omens could have got passed down for thousands of years as an enchanted sword, and the Eye of Thundera was a kyber crystal. And they discovered somehow that it amplified the enchantment, right? And with that said, the ancient spirits of evil, with Mumras, were either ancient dark side users or Sith. Ancient Sith. And much how we have the Temple of the Wells, the Temple of the Force. Much of the same thing with Mumra. He seeked them out, and him becoming Mumra is being manipulated by the dark side, right? Palpatine, the way Palpatine looks, when he got struck by the Force lightning, a lot of people believe that what we ended up seeing is his true form, because he was so twisted and hurt. That was his true form, because he was so twisted by the dark side. Hence why Mumra got so twisted and mangled because of the dark side. And then some of the mutants going down. Slithe would be a subspecies of Trandoshan. Right? Much like many species have, there's many different kinds of monkeys. He could be just a subspecies of Trandoshan. But he's also considered an amphibian, so it could be, one way or a divergence of Trandoshan, if you will. Jackalman, there's a couple species that I looked up. Schistavenin, Amarin, or Defels. He could be one of those. Vultureman, possible Caliban or Foch. And they were bounty hunters. And they got hired by Mumra. And now they are stuck with Mumra. I tried looking up for like Monkey Inn and I just try to connect a lot of the species to similar in Star Wars. Say maybe they're subspecies, they're related. Slithe could be like connected to the Selkath. You can be connected to Trandoshans. And so there's a lot of like little connections that you can make to other species, and so that's just my thoughts of connecting Thundercats into Star Wars. By all means, anybody, if anybody else has any ideas or connections to what it is, with Thundercats lore and Star Wars. The Robo Bearables, again, I didn't write that down, it just popped back in my head. They were droids. They are droids. Just one company decided to make their droids look like bears or Ewoks, or they experimented on Ewoks to make Robo Bearables. And the Techno Union, right? They tried taking X amount of friggin' Ewoks and making the Bearables. And so little connections like that I always made. So, peace.